Hello everyone, welcome to Under the Wing. I am your host Andrew Wingard, and I am extremely grateful that you are sharing your time with me today. I am excited that I get the opportunity to share with you the experiences and stories from all walks of life. Gather around and let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Under the Wing. I'm your host Andrew Wingard, and I have my dear friend with me, Nick Santucci. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing really good, Andrew. Thanks for having me on. It's good to be with you.
I appreciate you taking time, man. I know you are a busy man. Senior consultant for workforce and community development, and also state representative for the 64th district, man. So I just appreciate you taking time, man. I promise I won't keep you long, and because I know you're busy.
No, I have a little bit of time. I'm happy to sit with you, and I consider you a good friend. So when you reached out, it was a no-brainer. Happy to be here.
Awesome, man. So before we get too deep, man, you know where I'm going with this conversation here. You know, we were me, yourself, Justin. We were at a WWE event, you know, a few
Yeah.
weeks back, and you know, I think your fiance now. Again, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I thought you might have lost some cool points, man, when we were there.
Hey, man, I have no shame. I have
no,
no shame. Been a Triple H fan for a long time, so I love the sport. It's fun to rewind time and think about all the good memories that wrestling brought us. It
for
was fun
sure.
being there with you too. I loved reminiscing with you.
That's awesome, man. So I wanted to bring up this question to you, man, because I saw this meme and it said, you know, it had The Rock and Stone Cold. And it said, you know, LeBron and Michael Jordan, that's not a true GOAT discussion. This is the GOAT discussion, The Rock and Stone Cold. And so I was like, you're absolutely right, because I mean, this was our childhood, you know. So you may have mentioned the name already, who might be your favorite wrestler of all time. So who is your favorite wrestler of all time?
Yeah, so The Rock and Stone Cold was a really I'm gonna dork out on you a little bit. So here it comes. So The Rock and Stone Cold was a great storyline, was a great, like energy boost. But I loved when Triple H was my favorite. Triple H fought Stone Cold and
Yeah.
Triple H fought The Rock. Those were like that was my thing. And Triple H has always been my favorite. Just I've never been a real intimidating guy, and those of your listeners that know me know that I'm not very big guy. But Triple H was always this like larger than life guy to me, just super fit, super in shape, like a total bad guy, like really cool. And I always admired that because I've always been very nice and very kind. And Triple H would come out with the sledgehammer and just tear everybody up. And I was like, this guy is the best. And watching him now move through the company, marrying Stephanie McMahon, the boss's daughter, and now in a chief creative role at the company is really admirable. So to see, switching gears from like an ultra fan that I was and that I am into more of a business mindset, to see him be my like hero. I would get up and go to the gym and like come home and be like, oh, I can't wait to look like Triple H. It never happened. But in my mind, I was like, yeah, that's the end game. Looking like Triple H and being like this motorhead guy, like, and seeing him move through the company into more of a sophisticated role, leading these younger wrestlers into their futures and their career, I think is really admirable. And I've gained just an additional amount of respect and admiration for him. I also I would read a lot about Triple H, and he was so into his physique and his health. He never drank and he never smoked. And that was something I always admired growing up. And that was something I always tried to avoid, putting myself in situations where, I'm offered a drink or offered a cigarette or something to smoke. And I'm rambling a little bit, but Triple H was my guy for more reasons than one. But Rock and Stone Cold, they were at the top of their game. But when Triple H inserted himself, man, that's when I was hooked.
Yeah. No, you bring up something that I want to piggyback on a little bit. And I just had a conversation with someone, and we were talking about leadership, right? And so you look at what we know Triple H as, the tenacity, the rough and rugged, and now he's in a leadership position. Do you think that tenacity helped him in the role that he's in now, in terms of, like you mentioned, mentoring and leading the WWE now?
That's a good question, and I do think just his love and his passion for the company, I think, set him apart and put him in that unique position for chief creative officer. And for those of your listeners, like, the chief creative guy is the guy that writes the storylines,
Right.
and so now he's sitting in a position where, throughout his career, he's literally ate and slept and breathed the business, married into the family that owned the company, and now he is in this spot where he's working with this younger talent, and he's training them to be, creative on their own, and bring their character, personality traits out in their characters that they're portraying. I think it's just super awesome to see. And as far as tenacity goes, he was always just a total, champion, always was hungry to be the best, and that was the character he portrayed. But I follow him a lot, and he's up early in the morning. He's flying on the jet to get to multiple training facilities. Wrestlers are constantly on the road. It's a really tough job, super athletic, but he's right there. He's got the headset on behind the scenes, and he's talking to the referees out in the audience. I mean, it's really cool to see him. Like I said, I just admire him a whole nother level now as a senior executive rather than
Right.
a professional wrestler. It's just really cool, and it's inspirational to guys like me that I get up early. I want to thrive. I've had a really unique career set that has brought me to the situation I'm in today, and what I'm running for, and what I'm working towards. And you've got to earn it, and I think
Right.
he's earned it in the ring, and he's earning it as a senior leader. And I think I would love to meet him. I've never had the opportunity to meet him, but if I ever did meet him, I would definitely tell him how much of an impact he's made on me throughout my life.
That's awesome, man. So I'm actually going to come back to that Triple H question here, and so I know we can just spend so much time on just that area in itself,
Yeah.
man. And so I'm going to hopefully come back to that, because I had a thought, and I'd like you to expand on it a little bit. But let's dive into the discussion a little bit. And I meet you. You're probably one of the first people I meet when I get to Youngstown.
Yeah.
Um, I get involved with the Youngstown Regional Chamber, and you're one of the first few people. You're still at the chamber at this time, and I'm just extremely grateful for you guys, because the entire crew there just kind of wrapped their arms around me, including some others who were attached to the chamber at
Sure.
that time. And it was just the warmth, the hospitality, man. So I'm grateful for you guys, and I appreciate all the love that you showed me there in Youngstown. So give us a little history, man. I gave a little bit about what you're doing right now, but how did you get to where you are right now?
Sure. So I graduated from Howland High School in 2009, and when I graduated from Howland, I moved away to John Carroll University up in University Heights, and graduated from there in 2013. And we were coming right off the cusp of the 2012 election, President Obama versus Mitt Romney, then Governor Mitt Romney. And I was involved and active in political science. That was my degree that I graduated with. And so I was real tingly on the politics stuff, and so I moved back home, and I started applying for jobs in the area. And I recognized that I really wanted to work in the business space. I wanted to learn how business ran and operated. And so I started applying for internships throughout the region, and ended up landing an internship at the Youngstown Warren Regional Chamber, where I worked there 2 days a week. And the other 3 days of the week, I worked in the Trumbull County Commissioner's office. So I got a little bit of politics and business after I graduated. And um, it was an amazing experience. I was a government affairs intern. I was exposed to a lot of high level information and projects that we were working on. And after my internship ended, I took a role in the commissioner's office as a human resources agent. Well, it was a human resources department, but I basically ran and did all of the benefit packages for our county employees. So I made sure that all of their information was up to date, that the insurance company had it. And it was a really great job. I actually had a lot of fun doing that work. And then I saw and noticed at the chamber that an education and workforce development role opened up. And so I decided to consider applying, and I ended up doing it, of course, and I landed the role. I was hired as the manager of education and workforce development, and really proud of the work I did there. What my major job at the time, Andrew, was to understand the needs of the business community. So what are the major workforce challenges that our community faces, and why were we not filling the workforce need?
Right.
And so I worked with our educational institutions, and I worked with trades and labor to try to identify and understand that. And so recognizing that the business community had major workforce challenges, like we have a drug issue here. I know you're familiar with these
Mm-hmm.
these talking points. We have human trafficking challenges here. We have transportation challenges here in the Valley. The drug issue, we have 40 to 60% of applicants were failing drug tests coming through the interview process. It was crushing our businesses.
Wow.
So what I did was I worked with the education, brought them into a room, brought CEOs and human resources folks into a room, and brought trades and labor into a room. And we talked about, how do we solve some of these problems? Education would say, hey, business isn't hiring our kids. Trades and labor was saying, hey, we want to recruit these kids for our electrician jobs and plumber jobs that are need filled. And business was saying, well, the education system isn't preparing our kids for the jobs that we have available.
Right.
So everybody was kind of finger pointing. And so we tried our best to solve some of those problems, brought everybody in the room and ironed out some of those issues. And we were really successful. And then Tom Humphreys, who's the president and CEO at the time, saw my work ethic and saw the impact we were making, and decided to promote me to director of education and workforce development. Mm-hmm. And we basically took that concept and just tried to bring it to another level. And we launched the Jobs Now program, which the chamber still uses today. It's a award-winning, nationally recognized program. And the end game for that program was to help alleviate some of that drug issue by covering the cost of drug tests for companies. So every companies that were chamber members had 5 free drug tests that they could use. Chamber partnered with Steward WorkMed to pay for those tests. And then every Tuesday night on the 5 o'clock news, we partnered with WKBN to highlight a chamber member and their workforce needs. And so the chamber member would get interviewed. They talk about their workforce challenges, talk about their workforce needs, talk about who's the point of contact and where potential applicants could apply to fill that job. And it was extremely successful. Companies that have used that program have been inundated with resumes. Companies that have utilized that program have saved a lot of money on their drug tests because
Mm-hmm.
we would cover those costs. So it was a great program. I'm proud of that. We also ran a community connectors program that helped teach 11th and 12th grade kids soft skills, because
Nice.
that was another workforce challenge that we would hear, that companies would say, we'd bring people in, but we can't maintain these folks because they don't answer the phone appropriately or professionally. They're not dressed correctly for their interviews. They don't make eye contact. Our basic soft skills, Andrew, that you and I are blessed with, our kids are lacking.
Mm-hmm.
And in some instances, our adults are lacking too. And
Right.
so we worked that program out, and we tried to train those students, and we also pushed those students into jobs. And I would argue, when we were running the program, I really didn't care if you worked at McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's. The skills that you learn in your first job will propel you to the next level.
Right.
And the accountability that you have as an employee will push you to your next role. And you may not work at Wendy's or McDonald's or Burger King forever, but the goal is just to get a paycheck, be on time, have respect, all of those things that, like I said, we've been blessed with. And then I got promoted again to government affairs. I was director of government affairs at the chamber before I left, where we advocated for millions of dollars coming back to our community. I was proud of that work as well. I worked on capital budgets and operating budgets with state legislators, bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans. It was to benefit the Mahoning Valley. It wasn't to benefit a certain population of folks or a certain party. We worked to try to improve our region. And then I left and moved into the Educational Service Center in Mahoning County. Well, it's now the ESC of Eastern Ohio, where I advocated for kids. So taking both of my jobs at the chamber and kind of combining them, I worked on advocating for better education and working in tandem with the superintendent, Tracy Hostetler, over there. And I enjoyed my time there. I miss it in a lot of respects because I loved advocating for kids. I
Right.
loved working for better student performance and better schools. I loved it. And now I work for VAZA Consulting with my now boss, Dustin Piles, who's the CEO of the company, where we focus on helping companies and local governments and local municipalities and educational institutions accomplish their goals and objectives. So we help with grant writing, we help with advocacy support. So I'm not a registered lobbyist, but we help connect some of our policymakers to some of our clients to help them move their goals along. And so I've been blessed. I'm trying to be brief, but there's so much to
Yeah.
unpack in each one. I've really been blessed with the career path I've had, and I've had a lot of really great experiences. I've been exposed to a lot of stuff, and I'm now running for state representative, candidate of the 64th district. And I think that the experiences and the fundamental understanding that I have of our area can really help me get in there and rock and roll on day one. I've been endorsed by almost the entire legislature in the House and the Senate, and so I'm blessed with that. And those relationships, Andrew, are key to help
Right.
moving policy along. So what would take a freshman senator or freshman representative 6 months to a year to learn the processes and build relationships and get co-sponsors on bills, I'm walking in ready to go.
Right.
And so I really think I'm in a unique spot to help our community and our families that are here, and hopefully bring families back to the
Yeah.
area.
No, man. There is a few things that I want to touch on there that you mentioned, and one of the things that I admired about you most is just your passion for economic development in the Mahoney Valley. And I remember talking to one of my students when I taught at YSU, and she talked about, oh, I only work at McDonald's, and she kind of said that in a way that she didn't really want to share it, but understanding, like, take advantage of that opportunity, that first job, like you said, you can use that. So what I would like you to do, man, is just some wisdom, lay some wisdom on there may be, a parent listening to this and they may share with, their young adult or teenager, how can a young adult teenager take advantage of that first job, and really not see it as a way as, oh, I'm just going to make this minimum wage. What can they do to really take advantage of a position like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Andrew, and I'm happy to kind of give my perspective. Obviously, some folks may not agree with me, but
Right.
this is what's helped me throughout my career. You know, looking back on my career, one of my first jobs, it was a summer job. I worked with my grandfather laying brick.
Yeah.
So he was a bricklayer. My other grandfather is a barber here in Howland, or was a barber in Howland. So the trades are in my blood, but the reason I bring up my grandfather was because obviously I'm still not laying brick, but the skill sets that I learned on that job is I think what fundamentally set the standard of a work ethic and what was expected of me.
Right.
And if you can imagine a less intimidating, smaller Nick Santucci from years and years ago, we're jumping back to the Triple H conversation, but a smaller Nick, it was like 98 degrees, 100 degrees, and we were out on the brick pile. My grandfather was up on scaffolding, and my job was to make sure he had enough bricks up on the scaffolding and enough, we call it mud, but it's mortar,
Right.
to get up for him to do his job. So we would have a pulley system, and I would set the bricks up and do all the mud, and I'd pull it up to him. Well, I would freeze my Gatorades the night before so that so that as the day would heat up, my Gatorade would thaw, and I'd be able to drink it and stay hydrated out in the heat. And so I sat down, I got him what he needed, and I sat down and opened my Gatorade and I started to drink. And my grandfather leaned over the balcony and said, "Get your buns up. We don't sit on the job." And it sounds really funny because you're smiling. I can see you.
Yeah.
Our listeners can't, but I can see you're smiling because it's funny. But that set a standard. for me and my work ethic. You don't sit on the job. You're being paid to perform.
Right.
And so, as funny as that instance was, and there were other instances with him out on the brick pile, but I always try to encourage younger folks to never feel like any job is better or worse than the other.
Right.
If you're working and you're growing and you're thriving and you're learning in that job, that's going to propel you to the next level. Whether you're running McDonald's Corporation, whether you're promoted to manager, it working at McDonald's or working at those entry level jobs should never be overlooked or undervalued,
For
in
sure.
my opinion. And so, parents and young folks that might be listening to this, you know, those soft skills that we talked about earlier are really key. You know,
Right.
demonstrating to your boss that you could be timely, that you have good morals and values and good character, that you could show up and do your job and
Right.
perform. That's going to set you far apart from anybody else. And again, you know, it's not just about doing the job today. It's about what's next for you. So yeah,
Right.
McDonald's, you might be flipping burgers right now, but you could demonstrate such leadership and such good character that a manager job opens up. And then
Right.
that takes you, then you take over that, you demonstrate that same work ethic, you could be promoted into corporate.
Yeah.
And I'm sticking on McDonald's, but that's a universally applied mindset,
For sure.
um, to get in there and do a good job and perform, and not always take things personally.
Right.
Sometimes, you know, throughout my career, some of the best learning opportunities I ever had was when my boss would get in my stuff. You know what I mean? When I wasn't perfect, and I don't claim to know everything even today, but when my boss would say, "Hey Nick, you're being a little lazy on this project," or "Hey Nick, you really need to step up your game. You know, you weren't as articulate as you could have been in that interview."
Right.
It snapped me back, and it recognized that, you know, it's not personal. I'm a nice guy. People like me, but it doesn't mean that my performance can't be better.
Exactly.
Um, and
Exactly.
so my advice is just, you know, do the best you can and try to demonstrate that you are a hard worker and you can make an impact wherever you are. Doesn't matter if it's public service, McDonald's, laying brick. You're there to do a good job, and if you can rock and roll, then I think that's a trait that's lost
For
today.
sure. No, man, that is good, man. That was powerful. And thank you for sharing that story, man, because that resonated with me a lot, man. So thank you for sharing that. Now, the second piece of
Sure.
that is you talked a little bit about your relationships and how your previous experience kind of helped you with this state representative position. So what I'd like you to do is, expand a little bit on that. Like talk about that transition from being, the senior consultant and now you're going into the state representative position as a candidate. What was that transition like for you?
Uh, another great question, Andrew. It's been an amazing experience, running for state representative, getting to know the people in your community, their challenges, the roadblocks that they're facing. In fact, I was knocking on someone's door the other day, and they answered the door. It was an elderly couple, and I asked, I introduced myself. I said, "Hey, I'm Nick Santucci. I'm running for state representative," and they told me that they can only afford 2 meals a day instead of three because of inflation.
Wow.
So here I am standing on their doorstep asking for their vote, and they're struggling.
Right.
And we see that across our entire district. So coming from a business mindset, my business experience, you don't have some of those interactions that you do as a candidate.
Right.
And so standing on someone's doorstep is very humbling, whether they slam the door in your face, whether they say they love you. It goes both sides of those spectrums. But when I was at the chamber, we advocated on behalf of our region at a very macro level view. Now I'm asking for folks to vote for me, and I'm advocating for our region on a very micro level view.
Yeah.
So it's been an amazing experience and rewarding. I've been blessed with good people that have supported me and that have had my back. I have my last name on people's T-shirts. My last name is in people's front yards. I've had people donate their hard-earned money to me. I'm blessed. Win or lose, I am a lucky guy. I've got a new fiance. You mentioned that. I really truly it's been an amazing experience, and win or lose, I am so grateful for the opportunity that folks have had confidence in my ability to serve. I think we're going to win. I'm
Yeah.
very confident we're going to win, but I'm I'm just humbled by the whole experience. So it's been eye opening,
Yeah.
the transition.
Wow, man, that's awesome, man. So I want to talk a little bit about you. You know that just going back to the picture of the slam door in your face. You know, and the because I think we all have those in our profession to where it's just like that's it just doesn't feel good at that moment. And so what I would like you to do is looking back early on in your career, maybe not as early as helping your grandfather, but like early on in your professional career, what are 2 to 3 lessons that you learned then that has helped you, get over those tough moments and those tough days when you're out on the campaign trail for, being a state rep?
Sure. So a couple things or advice or ways that get me through it. The first one that I try my best to keep my mindset in perspective. So, for example, I lost my mom in 2017, and
Wow.
it was very, very hard to come out of that with a positive perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Burying your mother, or your father, or a loved one doesn't even have to be that close to you, someone that you really admire and care about. Losing someone like that is very, very challenging. But I've always recognized that life is hills and valleys,
Right.
and losing her was very, very hard, and it was a valley that we went through. But coming out of it, I have a new fiance. I've got multiple jobs now. I've moved throughout my career. That's we're back on the hill, and so I try to keep everything in perspective. That this tough time is right now,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not going to last. It's
Right.
not going to last, and in 6 months, 2 months, a year, time frame could be anything, but that we're going to come up and we're going to be on the upward trajectory again and feeling really confident and good about ourselves. And so I miss my mom, but that was a really eye-opening experience in my leadership, was to recognize that while I miss her, while selfishly I wish she was here, I'm a man of faith. I believe that I'll see her again, and I believe that she's in paradise, in a place that is far better than we live here on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so while she's up with Jesus, I could share her with him,
Right.
and I still have work to do down here. The other thing too, Andrew, that I've learned early on in my career, and it was one of my former bosses that taught me this, and I said it earlier, things aren't always personal. Me knocking on someone's door doesn't mean they hate my guts. They
Right.
just don't like my politics.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. It's not personal. I get it. That's a very hard hat to change, though.
Right.
Sometimes when you have family, even, and friends that you've known for years and years, that you think um, would vote for you instantaneously, and I get Instagram messages and Facebook messages of folks that say, "I'm so disappointed you're a Republican," and it's not personal. It's
It's
not
not personal.
personal. You can't lose sleep over stuff. And so those are probably the two things that I've learned is, life is hills and valleys, and you have to expect the hard times with the good times.
Yeah.
And also, things aren't always personal,
That's
and you
good.
can't you can't take it that way. I'm, again, jumping back to performance. I'm here to do a job. I'm here to run for state representative and demonstrate that I'm the better candidate.
Yeah.
Um, it's not personal.
Yeah.
My opponent's a nice guy too, but different worldviews, different styles of leadership, and so I have to demonstrate that I'm qualified and capable, and I have the real experience to make an impact.
Right. Man, that hit me just being on the fundraising side of things. And it's like, it's not personal. You know what I mean? You can't make it feel that way or take it that way. So that hits home with me, man. So I'm actually gonna put that somewhere here on my table, man. So as we get ready to wrap up, man, and as I mentioned before, I'm just incredibly grateful of our time that we shared in Youngstown, and I appreciate your friendship over the years, man. And so you mentioned one of your former leaders, and I think you've had, as you mentioned, you've had a unique experience to where you're around so many of these leaders and community leaders and different people, man. And so what I would, as you've journeyed through time, you've seen leaders who have been able to sustain excellence. What does excellence mean to you? We don't have to get into that, but in regards to seeing leaders who you felt that you've had a high respect for, who you've seen sustain excellence, what are some of the commonalities that you've seen amongst those leaders that have really been successful and continue to thrive?
Yeah. So, um, another great question, Andrew. I've had the unique experience, like I mentioned earlier, and like you just mentioned, of interacting with a lot of really high performing people, folks that I've admired and respected and learned from. And I think one of the things that I've seen in all of them, and even has now been absorbed by me just by being around them, is having a vision of where you want to go, in a direction. And this is even something that I've brought to my race as a state representative. If you don't have a vision and direction of where you want to go, you're not going anywhere.
Right.
And we have a lot of folks here in the area. They're good people. Again, it's not personal, but they like status quo. It's very complacent. We're not growing and thriving. We're losing population of folks. And it's really hard to get up every day and go into work when you've been doing the same job for multiple years and just kind
Right.
of coasting along. And so for me, coming into the state rep race and from learning from some of my other mentors, has been, have a direction and have a vision of where you want to take the area, or where you want to take the organization, or where you want to take your family, or where you want to take anything,
Yeah.
and work to accomplish those goals and objectives so that you could see tangible results and you could say, well, we are making an impact, and here's the data that shows it, and here's the impact that we've made.
Right.
And for me, some of that vision is, making sure our area is clean with some
Right.
of the trash along the streets. It's really hard to attract businesses and families here when when the area looks bad and there's potholes and there's infrastructure challenges. That's one of the first things companies and families look for when they move here. And
Right.
I really want to work with our educational institutions to try to continue to improve our educational outcome and making sure that we're creating a qualified, capable human capital and getting those kids to fill those 8,000 jobs that are in the Tri-County area right now. So having just a vision, and recognizing that you may have a vision and it could go all out of whack.
Right.
That's part of the hills and valleys I was talking about, but at least you have an end game. At least you
Right.
have a vision of where you're taking your family or your friends or whoever you're leading.
Right.
And so those high performing folks that I've tried to absorb that knowledge from, you could tell the way they think, and you can understand their thought process, and they're very calculated in a good way, to get from A to Z.
Right.
That's something that I've really tried my best to implement as a state rep candidate, and even in my current role as a consultant.
Nice. Nice. And so, as I close every episode here on Under the Wing, what I would like to do is I'm a huge believer in giving away roses. And what I mean by that is, sharing your rose with someone who has had a tremendous impact on your life, preferably someone that's still alive, that you can share that rose with today. So what I'd like you to do, man, is think about one person that you would give that rose to today, as a thank you for whether it's guidance or just a shoulder, whatever it may be. Take time to give that rose up.
Yeah, I know you said preferably someone that's alive, but I really would have to give it to my mom who's passed.
Yep.
And the reason I would do that, Andrew, is because my mom was an incredibly strong lady.
Yeah.
And she was super kind and super sweet, but she took on a lot.
Yeah.
And we talked about tenacity with Triple H, but watching her lead our family and keep our family unit intact, and just being a strong role model, I think she deserves the rose. I've had, my father too. My father's overcome a lot. He's someone that I also equally admire and respect. And a lot of the mentors and my former bosses all deserve a rose. There's a lot of roses I'd be giving out, Andrew.
Well, that's why, man. I didn't want you to have to
You stumped me.
give
You
them out.
stumped me on that. but my mom was a strong lady, super sweet and super kind. She'd do anything for you, but don't cross her kids or don't cross her.
Yeah,
And I admire that, and she has impacted me. And it's sad too, Andrew, not to keep us any longer, but you don't appreciate things until they're gone.
for
Everybody says
sure,
that, but it's so true.
for sure.
And we really have to be grateful for the position we're in right now, and being very present in the moment,
Yeah,
because life changes very drastically, very quickly.
for sure.
And so lots of roses, but I think the rose my mom, Deborah, deserves it. She should get it.
Shout out to the moms all over the world, man. So we wouldn't be where we are without them. So thank you for sharing that rose with your mom. And Nick, man, like I said, I appreciate you, brother, for taking time to connect with me, man. And I wish you the best of luck on your career, and of course your state rep candidate. And I wish you much success, brother.
You're a good friend. Thanks, Andrew. I'm honored to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Under the Wing. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you enjoyed today's show and you would like to support the podcast, tell a friend or two, share on social media, or leave a rating and review. You can follow me on Instagram at Under the Wing with Andrew. Again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.